Hey, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Tremor, and this is the second episode of my game engine series. Today we are going to set up the code project, and we will also implement just enough code to see a white window, like nothing else, just a plain white window. But to be able to set up the code project, we will also have to download an IDE, and we will do this in this episode as well, so you guys will be able to follow me along while we implement today's content. But before we start, I want to address a comment that was made under the last episode. I will implement the entire engine from the ground up again in this YouTube series. You guys will be able to follow along and see how the engine will be implemented in its entirety. There might be some functionality that will take multiple episodes to implement, but I will split them up in a logical way so you guys will be able to follow along and understand what I'm doing. So now that we got the introductory stuff out of the way, we will start installing the IDE. I chose Microsoft Visual Studio for this YouTube series because of the fact that it is free in the community edition. And yeah, let's just start. So I will put myself into the bottom right corner and we will just search for Visual Studio 2022. And click the first link, then go on download and community 2022. This will open a download window, save it wherever you like. And then just double click the file that was downloaded, say yes, and this will install the Visual Studio installer. So after that is done, we will get a selection window where we can choose what we want to install. We are going to choose desktop development with C++. I am also going to install the Windows 10 SDK because I need that personally. You don't have to do that. And you can obviously also change the installation locations, but I leave them as they are. This will take around about 12 gigs and just click on install. And well, we will be back after that is finished. So we are back now, and after the installation is finished, we will get this window. If you want to, you can create a Microsoft account here, but you don't have to, and we will skip this for now. You can choose a theme here for Visual Studio. I will choose the dark theme, and there will be some configuration now and it will start. And this is the start window. We click on create a new project, select C++ from the language box and choose an empty project. And this would actually be a good place to talk about how the engine is called. And it's called Lucy Engine. Why Lucy Engine? Well, I like the name Lucy, so I just called the engine Lucy Engine. And since this is somewhat of the YouTube version of the engine, I will call the project Lucy Engine _ YouTube. Then we choose a path where it's supposed to live. And what I usually do is I check that box so that the solution file is placed in the same directory. And then we just click on create. And this will give us a new C++ project. So we close this home screen, or what changed, like release notes screen. And yeah, this is Visual Studio in a perfectly blank setup. And for personal preference, I usually drag the Solution Explorer to the left and dock it there. And then I also click on Show All Files, so you see all the directories and files in the project. And the great thing about Visual Studio is, as I already said before, it's free for like an individual license, so you can use it to actually also make money with the software you're writing if you are alone. And also for other groups of people, you can look the terms up on the Microsoft webpage. And it's also very comfortable because we don't have to install like any other software now. We can just start developing C++ applications. And to test that out, we will do a right click on the project and say add and new item, and just add a main CPP. And then we will just implement the like the main function. And we will include IO stream so we can print something to the console. Do a couple of new lines at the end, and then just start the app. And we should see a console saying hello YouTube. So that works already. So now that the main function is working, I want to say something about the required C++ knowledge. We will need an intermediate level of C++ for the game engine development. The syntax and key concepts should be known. And everything that is more complicated and goes a bit deeper into the guts of C++, I will explain in a separate YouTube series. As soon as the first C++ concept comes up that deserves a bit of a, well, more detailed explanation. So before we continue, let's have a quick recap. We downloaded and installed Visual Studio. We created a project and implemented the main function. So to reach the goal of this episode, we still have to implement the hello window. And to do that, we actually have to download our first third-party library, which is actually called GLFW. I will not go into too much detail about GLFW in this episode. Let me just say that it's a library which manages like window creation and window lifetime. It provides callbacks to receive window events, and it also provides the ability to handle user input. And since GLFW is an open source library, we can just clone it from GitHub. And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to put myself back into the bottom right corner. And I open my GitHub or my Git client and also GitHub. And then we just search for GLFW. And we go on code and we copy the download link. And this is a fork Git client. You can use any Git client. You can also use a Git bash. So that doesn't matter. We go on clone. It's already in there. And we clone it into the same directory where we created the Lucy Engine YouTube project. We select that and then we just say clone. And after it's done, we can copy the files into the Lucy Engine repository. So I'm using Total Commander for that. On the right side, I will select the GLFW repository. And on the left side, the Lucy Engine code project. So I will just create a directory vendor here, which we will use for the third-party libraries. And we will create another directory here called include and another directory called source. And this is all just temporary. At some point, we will change that to compile or build these third-party libraries into actual static libraries that we can link into the engine. But for now, we will just include the source code into our project. So we make these two folders here. Now we copy the contents from the GLFW GitHub repository into the Lucy Engine code project. Just copy those two folders in here. We don't need all these files, but I leave them in there for now. And I will actually change that into, no, we can just leave it like that. So now we go into Visual Studio and we click on refresh here and we should see the directories now. We have to do a right click on vendor and say include in project. So to actually be able to use the GLFW header files in our programs, we have to tell Visual Studio what they actually are. So we go on the project, right click and then properties. And we go on C, C++ and general, and there we add vendor and, oh, I made a mistake. We have to add another directory. And to actually do that now in a proper way, so we don't corrupt the project here, we should do that through the Visual Studio Solution Explorer. So we go on right click and we add a new folder and call that GLFW. And we're just going to select these include and source folder and move them into the GLFW folder. That takes a while. If you do that over like an external Explorer, like the Windows Explorer, it can happen that you corrupt the solution file and then you would have to repair that manually, and sometimes not even that works. So it's much more safe to do that through the Solution Explorer. And now we can compile the project, and we will get a lot of errors and warnings. These warnings and errors, they come from GLFW using functions that are deemed unsafe because they could produce a buffer overflow. It's also saying that consider using str_toc_s. Well, we can't do this because we would have to change the GLFW library. And that is a bit out of scope for this series. So we will apply the fix, and that is done by adding the preprocessor directive CRT secure no warnings. And I actually have that in the clipboard here. And it also says, in GLFW disables certain warnings related to the use of standard C library functions, but it is important to be aware of the potential risks of doing so and to take appropriate precautions in your code. I Googled that a long time ago, and I actually Googled it again for this episode, and it's pretty much everyone is doing this because you don't get it to work without applying this directive or by changing the library. So I copy that to the clipboard, right click on the project, properties, go on preprocessor, and I add that directive here, go on OK, and now we build again. Well, we have to copy, put that into comment here or it won't compile. Now we build it, and now the errors should be gone. But the warning remains that we are redefining the macro API entry, and that is because we need a second directive. We need to tell GLFW that it's supposed to build for Microsoft Windows, and we do that by adding another directive, which is called _GLFW_win32. Go on OK, and now that warning should be gone as well, and everything is compiling. Now we can add the include directory from before. That is under general, and we add vendor GLFW include. And while we are here, we can also set the language dialect to C++20. We go on apply, and now we should be able to include GLFW and GLFW3.h. And we compile again. And looks good. And now for the hello window. We have to do two things here. First, we have to initialize GLFW, and then we have to create the window. To find out how we do that, we're just gonna search for it. We search for GLFW init, which brings us to the wiki of GLFW. And there should be the function somewhere here. We can click on that. And we see it's a function that returns an integer and it has no arguments. So we are just calling that function by saying int glfw init success equals glfw init. and we check that variable. It returns a 1 if it's successful and a 0 if it's not successful. So we can just ask if not GLFW init success, then we print GLFW init failed, and we return a 1. And if it didn't fail, then we just print init successful. Let's run that. And we should get a console, and it says GLFW init successful. And so the last thing we have to do for today is to create the window. And we will just search for the GLFW function GLFW create window, the wiki again, scroll down a bit, and it should be here somewhere. Yeah, create window. And let's just copy the, no, we don't copy that. We just go on here again and say auto GLFW window equals GLFW create window. And there are a couple parameters. So the first two are width and height. Let's just say 1600 to 900, classic 16:9 aspect ratio. The title will be hello YouTube window. The next parameter decides if the window is displayed in full screen or windowed mode. And since we want windowed mode, we will supply a null pointer. If you want full screen mode, you have to supply a pointer to a GLFW monitor object. And the last parameter is not that important for us right now. It just decides if we are sharing the resources of this window with the context of another GLFW window. And since we don't want to do that right now, we just supply a null pointer. And now we can compile and run this and see if this actually works. So let's do that. And yeah, it worked, but it instantly closed again. So let's just implement a user input from the console so the application keeps on running. Just make an integer variable and read a value from the console. And now we should actually see the window. So we can't do anything with it now. We can't even move it because we are not handling user input. But we reached the goal of the episode, and that was to create the project and get the hello YouTube window going, which is just a white window with nothing in it. So I would say that this concludes the episode, and I will go back into full screen camera mode. I want to say something about your participation. If you want to participate in the development of the engine, then you can contact me over the YouTube details on the channel page or over Discord. There will be a link in the description of this video. And you can also leave a comment, of course. So the next episode, we will actually do a design episode where we will see what a game engine actually is in a bit more detail. And we will also do a first design iteration, which basically just means that we will make a list of 5, 6, 7 components that we will implement first. That will probably include the renderer and like an entry point into the program and the game class or like an application class. But yeah, that comes in the next episode. I thank you very much for the wonderful response to the first episode. If you like this episode, then subscribe to the channel and like the video. And thanks a lot for watching. And we will see each other next time. Bye bye.